the royal announcement in the shining halls of the Zinthari Empire, the great council gathered under the golden dome. Nobles in flowing robes, scholars with glowing scrolls, and warriors with polished armor all stood waiting. Today was an important day. The young princess, Alira, was about to announce her travel plans for the upcoming Galactic Alliance meeting. Everyone assumed it would be a simple announcement. A royal ship. A team of elite guards. The finest technology the Empire could offer, nothing less for a princess. But Princess Alira had her own plans. She stepped onto the central platform, her silver dress shimmering under the light. Her violet eyes scanned the crowd with calm strength. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "I will attend the Alliance Summit," she said. The crowd murmured in approval. "But," she continued, "I will only travel on a human ship." The hall fell silent. For a few long moments, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then the whispers started. "Humans," a noble hissed. "They are primitive," a scholar muttered. "Unfit to carry royal blood," a warrior spat. At the center of it all, Alira stood unmoved. Councillor Drell, an old and proud Zenthari, stepped forward, his face twisted in shock. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "surely you jest. The humans are barely above savages. Their ships are relics. They are not worthy." Alira's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "I do not jest," she said. "I will travel only if it is aboard a human vessel." The council buzzed with outrage. Some demanded explanations. Others shouted for tradition to be respected. One or two even suggested forcing the princess to change her mind. But Alira remained firm. She had her reasons. Reasons she did not yet reveal. Reasons hidden deep within her heart. Later, in the private gardens behind the palace, Alira walked alone. The artificial sun above her warmed the fragrant flowers, but her mind was far away. She remembered another sun, a real one, bright and fierce over a ruined battlefield on a distant colony world. She had been younger then, barely more than a child. Her shuttle had crashed during a diplomatic mission gone wrong. Alone, injured, and surrounded by enemies. She had thought her life was over, until the humans came. Not in sleek warships or polished uniforms, but in battered armor and dusty boots. They fought with everything they had, not for glory, not for conquest, but simply because they refused to leave someone behind. One human, a young captain named Ryder, had carried her through fire and chaos, shielding her with his own body. He had been hurt badly, but he had smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, princess, we don't quit." They had saved her life that day, and they had asked for nothing in return. No rewards, no glory, only the satisfaction of doing what was right. That moment had stayed with Alira. It had changed her. It had planted a seed of respect, deep and unshakable. Now, years later, she would honor that memory. She would trust the humans, even if her own people did not understand, especially because they did not understand. Back inside the council chambers, arguments raged on. Some councillors suggested building a fake human-style ship just to satisfy the princess. Others wanted to delay her travel, hoping she would change her mind, but none dared openly defy her. Not yet. In the end, under pressure from the Alliance to attend the summit, the council agreed, grudgingly, secretly furious. They would hire a human ship, an old freighter called Liberty's Edge, captained by none other than Ryder himself, the very human who had once saved their princess. It was fate, or perhaps something more, something waiting in the stars. As preparations began, whispers spread across the empire. Some called Alira foolish, others called her brave, but everyone agreed on one thing. This journey would not be simple, and not everyone wished the princess safe passage. Hidden among the council were those who saw her choice as a threat, a crack in the empire's pride, a dangerous idea that humans might be equals. Those who feared change would stop at nothing to prevent it, even if it meant betrayal, even if it meant blood. Far away, aboard the Liberty's Edge, Captain Ryder received the message. He stared at the transmission in disbelief. "Escort a royal princess?" Him? On his old, battered ship? He laughed and shook his head. Well, he muttered, this should be interesting. He had no idea just how right he was, because in the cold depths of space, destiny was already moving, and soon, human and alien would stand together again. This time, not by accident, but by choice, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The key. Forbidden encounter. The gardens of the Zenthari Palace were filled with soft music and gentle laughter, but Princess Alira barely noticed. Her mind was far away, trapped in memories that refused to fade. Memories of fire, memories of blood, memories of a human who had taught her the true meaning of loyalty. It had happened 3 years ago. Alira had been sent as a diplomatic envoy to the colony world of Viridian Prime. A simple mission, her advisors had said. A show of unity between the Zenthari and the other races of the Galactic Alliance. She had worn her finest robes, carried the royal crest, and spoken words of peace. But peace was fragile, and not everyone wanted it. On the 3rd day of her visit, rebel forces attacked. They struck at night, swift and brutal. The royal guards fought bravely but were overwhelmed. Alira's shuttle was destroyed before it could lift off. Panic gripped the colony. Civilians scattered. Communication. Lines fell silent, and in the chaos, Alira was left behind. Alone. Wounded. Hunted. She remembered running through the smoking streets, the smell of burning metal thick in the air. She remembered falling, a sharp pain in her leg where shrapnel tore through her skin. She remembered the sound of boots approaching, rough voices shouting, and she remembered thinking, this is how I die. But then, through the smoke, a figure appeared. Not a Zenthari, not a rebel, a human. His armor was battered and scorched. His face was smeared with dirt and blood, but his eyes were steady, kind. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. Hold on, princess, he said, his voice rough but reassuring. You're not dying today. Captain Ryder. She learned his name later. At the time, she only knew his strength, his courage. He carried her through the ruins, dodging gunfire, shielding her with his own body. More than once he took hits meant for her, yet he never slowed, never faltered. When they reached a hidden shelter, he set her down gently, wincing from his own wounds. We'll wait for extraction, he said, checking his weapon. No one's taking you while I'm breathing. Alira, weak from pain, could only stare at him. Why? Why risk his life for her? They had no alliance, no treaty, no duty, only choice, only heart. They hid there for hours. The rebels searched the ruins, their footsteps growing closer. At one point, Ryder handed Alira a small battered pistol. If they find us, he said quietly, don't let them take you. Alira gripped the weapon with shaking hands. In that moment, she realized something profound. Humans valued freedom above all, even above survival, and they were willing to fight for it, to die for it, to protect even those who were not their own. Something inside her shifted. A small, stubborn seed of respect planted itself deep in her heart. Rescue finally came at dawn. Zenthari ships descended in force, scattering the rebels. Medics rushed to the shelter. Royal guards surrounded her. Captain Ryder stood aside, silent, ready to disappear back into the crowd like he had done nothing extraordinary. Alira stopped him. Your name? She demanded. He blinked, surprised. Ryder, he said simply. She reached out, pressing a royal medallion into his hand. A gift, a promise. He hesitated, then closed his fingers around it. No words were needed. They understood each other, without treaties, without orders, without lies, only truth, only trust. After returning to the palace, Alira was forbidden to speak of the incident. The council feared it would damage the Empire's image if word spread that a human, of all beings, had saved their princess. The records were sealed, the reports rewritten, Ryder's name erased from official memory, but Alira never forgot. She kept the battered medallion hidden in her chambers. She kept the memory hidden in her heart, waiting for the day she could honor it, waiting for the moment she could choose her own path. Now that day had come. By demanding a human ship, by choosing a human captain, she was breaking the unspoken rules of her people. She was challenging centuries of pride and arrogance. She was risking everything, but she would not back down. Not for tradition, not for fear. She owed it to herself. To Ryder. To the future. In a quiet corner of the palace, Alira opened a small secret compartment in her jewelry case. Inside lay the old medallion. Scratched. Scorched. Precious. She traced its edges with her fingers, feeling the bond between past and present. Between two beings who had chosen to stand, together when everything else fell apart. She closed her eyes. Soon, she whispered, we will meet again. And this time, the galaxy will see. Far across space, aboard the battered freighter Liberty's Edge, Captain Ryder checked the final navigation charts. His crew bustled around him, grumbling, joking, arguing like family. None of them had any idea what waited ahead. Ryder glanced at the Royal Commission letter one last time. He didn't care about politics. He didn't care about crowns or councils. He only cared about the promise he had made years. Hagosan, to protect, to stand, to never quit. Even when the whole galaxy said otherwise. He smiled faintly, the medallion tucked safely in his jacket pocket. Well, Princess, he muttered, let's see how much trouble we can get into this time. And with a roar of ancient engines, the Liberty's Edge jumped into the stars, toward destiny, toward reunion, toward a future no one could predict, but one that would change everything. Forever. Human ship, human rules, the shuttle carrying Princess. Alira approached the human freighter Liberty's Edge with smooth precision. Outside the viewports, the ship floated against the endless black of space like a stubborn survivor. Scarred, but proud. It was nothing like the polished, perfect vessels of the Zenthari fleet. Its hull was scratched and dented. Its engines gave off uneven hums. Some parts looked older than Alira herself. Counselor Drell, standing stiffly beside her, could barely hide his disgust. This is the ship you have chosen, he sneered. Alira said nothing. Her gaze remained fixed on the freighter, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. This was not about appearances. This was about trust and memory. The shuttle docked with a dull thud. The hatch opened, and there he was. Captain Ryder. He stood at the top of the ramp, arms crossed, wearing a battered flight jacket and a half-smile that somehow made him look both welcoming and dangerous. His hair was messier than she remembered. A thin scar traced his jawline. But his eyes were the same, steady, unbreakable. Welcome aboard, Ryder said casually. Hope you're not allergic to duct tape and good luck. Counselor Drell bristled at the informal greeting. You will address the princess with the respect due her station, he snapped. Ryder raised an eyebrow. Then, he looked directly at Alira. You all right, princess? Alira stepped forward, ignoring Drell. I am, she said warmly. Thank you for coming. Ryder gave a short nod. Always. And in that simple word, years of silence fell away. The crew of the Liberties, Edge gathered in the docking bay. They were a strange mix, humans of different worlds and backgrounds. Engineers, medics, pilots, even a retired Marine or two. None wore uniforms. Some didn't even bother to salute. But their eyes were sharp, their loyalty clear. They had survived battles the rest of the galaxy preferred to forget. And they had no time for empty rituals, only action, only trust. Captain Ryder led Alira through the ship on a quick tour. The corridors were narrow and cluttered with exposed pipes. The walls bore scratches from old fights and quick repairs. But everything felt alive, not polished, not perfect, but real and strong. Ryder explained the basic rules of the ship. No fancy titles. Everyone pulls their weight. Respect goes both ways. If there's a problem, you come to me directly. Alira listened carefully. It was different from anything she had known. In the palace, power flowed down. Orders were obeyed without question. Here, respect was earned, not given. It thrilled her more than she dared admit. As they passed through the cargo bay, a low rumble shook the floor. Elira tensed. So did Counselor Drell. What was that? Drell demanded. Ryder didn't even blink. Engine hiccup, he said casually. She does that when she's thinking too hard. Drell looked horrified. Elira smiled. This was why she had chosen a human ship. Not for comfort, not for prestige, but for the raw, stubborn will to survive. To keep moving forward, no matter how broken things seemed. Hours later, the ship detached from the station and entered deep space. The journey to the Alliance summit had begun, but trouble already brewed in the dark. Deep within the cargo bay, hidden inside an unregistered container, something stirred, something that wasn't supposed to be there, something that pulsed with faint blue light. Watching, waiting. In the ship's mess hall, the crew gathered for a simple meal. No formal dinners, no golden plates, just stew, bread, and laughter. Elira sat among them, a strange sight in her royal robes. But she didn't mind. She listened to their stories. Tales of battles fought, friends lost, dreams still burning despite it all. They treated her like one of their own, not because of her title, but because she had chosen to stand among them, to walk their path. And in their eyes, that was what mattered. After dinner, Captain Ryder called a private meeting with Elira in the command lounge. The lights were low. The hum of the engines filled the silence. You sure about this, Princess? Ryder asked, leaning back in his chair. Traveling with humans isn't exactly the royal way. Elira met his gaze. The royal way would have let me die years ago, she said quietly. Your way saved me. Ryder studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real, warm smile. Glad you remembered. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the bond between them stronger than words. But beneath the surface, both sensed it. The ship was not safe. Something lurked in the shadows, a danger they had not yet seen. Late that night, alarms blared through the ship. The emergency lights flashed red. Crew members scrambled to stations. Unauthorized energy spike in cargo bay 2. Someone shouted. Ryder and Elira rushed to the bay, weapons drawn. What they found made them both stop cold. The unregistered container had cracked open, and inside, a shimmering device floated, humming, with dark energy. A tracker, a beacon. Someone had hidden it among the cargo, and now across the stars their enemies knew exactly where they were. Ryder cursed under his breath. We've been set up. Elira's face hardened. They want me dead, she said. They want to shame the humans. Both. Ryder nodded grimly. Then we'll have to disappoint them. Outside the ship, in the deep, endless black, something stirred. A shadow moved. A hunter fleet, closing in. And this time it would take more than courage to survive. It would take trust, and the strength of a bond forged not by duty, but by choice. Storms in space. The alarms rang through every corridor of the Liberties. Edge red lights flashed. The engines growled under heavy strain. Captain Ryder stood firm on the bridge, gripping the edge of the console as the ship bucked and shuddered around him. On the main screen, a terrifying sight filled their view, an ion storm. Vast, angry, stretching across the stars like a living beast. Purple lightning danced across swirling clouds of cosmic dust, and in its heart shadows moved, shapes that were not just part of the storm. Something hunted them within it, something fast, something deadly. Princess Elira stumbled onto the bridge, bracing herself against the shaking walls. What is happening? She shouted over the roar of the engines. Ryder glanced at her grimly. Trap, he said. They forced us into the storm. Elira stared at the screen, realization dawning. The tracker hidden in the cargo had not only revealed their position, it had led them into this death trap. Can we escape? She asked. Ryder shook his head. If we jump to hyperspace now, the storm will tear us apart. He pointed to a narrow path through the swirling chaos. But if we ride the edge of the storm, if we hold our course just right, we might make it through. Might. Alira asked, raising an eyebrow. Ryder grinned despite the situation. Got a better idea, Princess? Alira smiled tightly. Carry on, Captain. The crew moved like a single living thing. Engineers secured the unstable systems. Pilots adjusted the thrusters manually. Gunners prepared the defense turrets. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a purpose. On human ships, survival was not a gift. It was earned. The Liberty's edge plunged into the outer edges of the storm. The ship shook violently, metal groaning under the pressure. Sparks flew from overloaded panels. Oxygen masks deployed automatically as the air thinned. Steady, Ryder barked. Stay on course. Through the viewing screen, blinding flashes of lightning lit up the darkness. Twice, massive chunks of frozen debris slammed past the hull, missing them by meters. And through it all, the hunter ships followed. Small, fast, ruthless. They weaved through the storm like predators chasing wounded prey. The first blast hit the aft shield, sending the ship spinning sideways. Alarms screamed. Shields down to 60%, shouted the tactical officer. Ryder swore under his breath. Return fire. Blind them. The gunners fired bursts of electromagnetic pulses into the storm, scattering the smaller ships and buying precious seconds. But it would not be enough. Not for long. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Harris fought a losing battle against the storm's fury. Panels overloaded. Coolant lines burst. The main drive sputtered dangerously. And through it all, Harris barked orders, refusing to give up. Divert. All power to the stabilizers, he roared. We lose control, we're dead. Sweat poured down his face as he manually rebalanced the ship's power grid, sparks flying around him. He had been a soldier once. He knew what it meant to fight for survival with nothing but stubbornness and grit. Back on the bridge, Ryder made a choice, a crazy, reckless human choice. We can't outrun them, he said, so we make them crash. Alira frowned. How? Ryder pointed at a dense cluster of magnetic anomalies ahead. We lure them in. Let the storm do the work. Alira hesitated. It was risky, but it was the only chance. Do it, she said. Ryder pushed the engines to their limits, steering straight into the worst part of the storm. The ship groaned, metal screamed, alarms howled. Behind them, the hunter ships pursued, unwilling to lose their prize. They followed Liberty's edge into the magnetic chaos, and there, the storm struck. Lightning danced between the anomalies, tearing at the small ships. One by one, they were ripped apart, shattered, consumed. The storm showed no mercy, no favoritism, only raw, blind destruction. Inside the freighter, the crew held, on grim, silent, unbreakable. When they finally cleared the worst of the storm, silence fell. The battered ship floated in a pocket of calm, engines smoking, hull scorched but intact. Cheers erupted from the crew. They had survived, against every odd, against every plan made to destroy them. They had survived. Ryder leaned against the console, breathing hard. He turned to Alira, his smile tired but genuine. See? Told you duct tape and luck would save us. Alira laughed. A real, joyous sound that echoed through the bridge. I am beginning to understand humans, she said. You do not survive because of your strength. You survive because you refuse to fall. Ryder shrugged. Close enough. But even as the crew celebrated, Ryder knew it wasn't over. The hunters might be gone. The storm might be behind them. But the true enemy still waited. And now, they were deeper into enemy space than ever before. Alone, vulnerable, and carrying a princess. The galaxy was willing to kill to silence. In the quiet of the captain's quarters later that night, Ryder sat staring at the old royal medallion Alira had given him years ago. He remembered the fire, the blood, the choice he had made, not for orders, not for glory, but because it was right. And now, here they were again, standing together against impossible odds. He closed his hand around the medallion. Whatever came next, he would see it through. For her. For them all. Far beyond the storm, in the black heart of deep space, Unseen eyes watched. Fleet gathered, larger, stronger, merciless. They had failed to trap the humans in the storm, but they would not fail again. They would strike with the full power of ancient hatred, and this time they would not stop until liberty itself burned. The hidden enemy, the storm, was behind them, but danger was not. On the bridge of the Liberty's edge, the crew worked quickly, patching systems and running damage checks. Ethan Ryder stood at the command console, his face grim. Beside him, Princess Alira scanned the long-range sensors. There was something out there, something waiting, something worse than storms or pirates, something patient and deadly. "Status?" Ryder barked. "Engines holding at 40%, said Chief Harris through the comm. "Shields down to 20. Weapons, barely breathing." Ryder ran a hand through his hair. They were alive, but one strong attack would finish them, and somehow he knew it was coming. Alira leaned closer to the screen, frowning. "There," she whispered. Ryder followed her gaze. Hidden among the wreckage left by the storm floated small beacons, almost invisible, almost harmless, except they pulsed in rhythm, sending a signal, tracking them, marking them. "They want us tired," Ryder said. "They want us weak. Then they will strike." Alira nodded. "And it will not be pirates this time. It will be something worse." Hours later they saw it. A fleet, moving through the stars like a silent wave, black ships with no markings, no signals. Predators, designed not to conquer, but to erase. A hidden faction. Enemies of both human and Zenthari. A force so secret that even most council members only whispered their name. The Silencers. "What do we do?" asked Rack, one of the human gunners, his voice tight with fear. "Fight?" suggested another crewman. Ryder shook his head slowly. "No, we run." He pointed at a thin corridor of space between two dying stars, a place few dared to travel. Unstable, dangerous, perfect. "We go through the grave path," he said. Gasps filled the bridge. "No ship makes it through there," Rack said. Ryder smiled grimly. "Good thing we're not just any ship." The Liberty's edge changed course sharply. The Silencers followed without hesitation. They wanted the princess, wanted her silenced before she could reach the Alliance summit, before she could reveal the Council's lies, before she could change the balance of power forever. The grave path was worse than Ryder remembered. Fields of floating debris, dead ships from 100 lost battles, crushed hulls, twisted metal, silent tombs. The stars themselves seemed dimmer here, as if the universe itself mourned. Navigation became guesswork, every move a gamble, every second a race against death. Inside the ship, tension tightened like a wire ready to snap. The crew trusted Ryder, but fear gnawed at them. Machines groaned under the pressure. Oxygen levels dropped, temperatures fluctuated, and always, the black ships followed, silent, relentless, waiting for a mistake. Then it happened. A low thud echoed through the ship, not from outside, from within. Lights flickered, systems stuttered. Ryder turned sharply to Alira. That wasn't the storm. She nodded, her expression hardening. Someone planted something, an inside threat, a traitor among them. The search began immediately. Every crew member was scanned, every room checked, until they found it, hidden deep in the engine room, a small device, pulsing, counting down, a bomb. Chief Harris worked furiously to disable it. Sweat poured down his face. "Whoever planted this knew our systems," he muttered. "This wasn't pirates. This was one of us." Alira stood over the device, her heart pounding. This wasn't just betrayal. This was personal. Someone on board wanted her dead, wanted the humans blamed, wanted the bond between them shattered before it could reshape the galaxy. The timer on the bomb ticked down. 60 seconds, 59, 58. Ryder made a decision. "Cut the power to the engine room," he ordered. "Seal all doors," Chief Harris shouted. "That'll trap us inside." "Better trapped than dead," Ryder said. The crew moved fast. Panels were ripped open, circuits rerouted, And at the last second, seconds away from disaster, Harris cut the primary line. The bomb went dead. The ship shuddered, but it held. Barely. Silence. Fell. Broken only by heavy breathing. They were alive. But trust was broken. Someone had betrayed them, and they didn't know who. Ryder called a meeting on the bridge. Everyone gathered, faces pale and tight. He stood before them, arms crossed. "Someone on this ship tried to kill us," he said. "Someone tried to kill her." He nodded toward Alira. "We're not leaving this room until we find out who." The crew shifted uneasily. Eyes darted, whispers hissed. Fear thickened. Then Alira stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. "We will find the truth," she said. "Not by fear, but by choice. Step forward now," she said, "and mercy will be given. Hide, and there will be none." For a long moment no one moved. Then a figure stepped out. Xanthari envoy, sent with her by the council, trusted, or so she thought. His eyes were full of hate. "You should have died in the storm," he hissed. "You betrayed our kind. You chose the humans over your own." Alira faced him without flinching. "I chose truth," she said. "I chose freedom." The traitor lunged, too fast, too desperate. But Ryder was faster. A single shot rang out, and the traitor fell. Dead silence returned. Heavy. Final. Later, as the crew repaired the damage and prepared for the final stretch of the journey, Ryder found Alira staring out at the stars. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes. I know who I am now. I know what I'm fighting for." Ryder smiled faintly. "Good. Because the real fight's just ahead." They stood together side by side as the Liberty's edge sailed deeper into the darkness, toward the Alliance summit, toward destiny, toward a battle not for survival but for the future itself. The Princess's choice, the Liberty's edge sailed through the final stretch of the grave path, battered but unbroken. The black ships of the silencers no longer pursued them. For now, the ship's corridors buzzed with quiet activity as the crew repaired damage, counted supplies, and checked weapons. But a heavier tension hung in the air, not from fear of battle, but from the weight of the decision that lay ahead, a decision that belonged to one person, Princess Alira. On the bridge, Captain Ryder leaned over the navigation console. He checked the route again, then again. They were close, so close. The Alliance summit floated ahead, an enormous station built in the orbit of a golden world, surrounded by hundreds of ships from every known race. It was there that Alira was expected to appear, to smile, to bow, to pretend everything was fine, to surrender to the Council's control. But Ryder knew she wasn't that kind of princess anymore. She had seen too much, suffered too much, and she had changed, deeply, completely. Alira stood alone in the observation bay, staring at the gathering fleets. Her heart pounded with the weight of the future. The Council wanted her to return to the old ways, to reinforce the Xanthari pride, to keep humanity chained to the margins. But in her hands was a different choice, dangerous one, an impossible one, a true choice, to stand with the humans, to name them as equals, to tear down walls that had stood for centuries. But if she chose that path, she would make powerful enemies. The Council would see it as betrayal. They would come for her. For the humans. For anyone who dared dream of a different galaxy. The door behind her hissed open. Ryder stepped inside. He didn't speak. He simply stood, beside her looking out at the same stars. After a while, Alira said quietly, "They will destroy me if I choose wrong." Ryder shrugged. "Maybe. But maybe choosing right isn't about staying alive. Maybe it's about making sure the right thing survives." Alira turned to him, her eyes full of storm and fire. "Will you stand with me?" Ryder didn't hesitate. Always. 3 years ago he had carried her through a battlefield. Now they would walk together into a different kind of war. The Alliance summit loomed closer. Formalities began. Messages flooded in. Requests for docking codes. demands for proof of identity, warnings about violations. The council tightened their grip with every passing minute, but the Liberty's Edge did not slow, did not bow, did not ask permission. It simply approached boldly, proudly, like a human. The plan was simple, dangerous, but simple. Alira would walk into the summit hall, not as a prisoner, not as a puppet, but as herself. She would speak to every race gathered there. She would declare the humans, not as subjects, not as tools, but as allies, as equals. And in doing so, she would force the galaxy to choose, to stand with her, or against her. There would be no middle ground, no easy peace, only truth and consequence. The docking clamps seized the freighter with a loud clang. The bridge shuddered slightly. Final preparations began. Alira donned her royal robes, not the traditional gold and red of Zenthari pride, but simple silver and blue, colors of unity, colors of hope, colors chosen by her, not the council. Ryder adjusted his battered flight jacket, checking the old sidearm holstered at his hip. "Ready?" he asked. Alira smiled faintly. "No, but that has never stopped me before." They stepped into the docking corridor together. Crew members lined up, standing at attention, not because they were ordered, but because they believed. Because they knew that today was not about crowns. It was about something bigger. Something worth fighting for. Worth risking everything for. The summit hall was a vast cathedral of glass and steel. Ambassadors, generals, scholars, and rulers from 100 worlds filled the tiers. Holographic banners shimmered above them, displaying the sigils of ancient empires, and at the center on the grand platform sat the Zenthari Council. Cold, watchful, waiting. As Alira entered, a hush fell over the crowd. The counselors rose slowly, their faces masks of false smiles and hidden knives. "Princess Alira of the Zenthari," the Grand Speaker announced, "we welcome you to the summit. You may address the assembly." The trap was set. The words were poisoned with expectation. Say the wrong thing, and she would be condemned. Say nothing, and humanity would be forgotten. Alira walked to the center of the platform, stood tall, and spoke. "Friends of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I come before you not as a ruler, not as a symbol of old power, but as a voice for something new." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I have traveled among humans. I have fought beside them. I have bled beside them. They are not our inferiors. They are not our tools. They are our equals." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The counselors stiffened, their hands twitched toward hidden comms. But Alira pressed on. "I declare, here and now, that the humans of Earth and their allies are recognized as sovereign members of the Galactic Alliance. And I stand with them, by choice, by bond, by heart." The hall exploded into chaos. Shouts, accusations, threats. The counselors rose from their seats, faces twisted with fury. But it was too late. The words were spoken, the declaration made. The galaxy had heard, and nothing could undo it. Hidden agents moved toward the platform, weapons drawn, but Ryder was ready. He stepped in front of Alira, sidearm raised. The crew of the Liberty's Edge surged into the hall, forming a living shield around her. For a moment it seemed violence would erupt. Blood would be spilled on sacred ground. Then, slowly, other figures stepped forward. Ambassadors, from smaller worlds, outcasts, rebels, survivors, one by one. They stood with Alira. They stood with the humans, with the future. The council realized they had lost, at least for today. They would retreat into the shadows. Plan, plot, wait. But they could not stop what had begun. They could not kill an idea. They could not kill hope. That night aboard the Liberty's Edge, as the stars spun outside the windows, Ryder found Alira sitting alone in the cargo bay. "You did it," he said softly. Alira looked up, a small smile on her lips. "No," she said. "We did." They sat together in the quiet, two souls from different worlds, bound by choice, by trust, by something greater than blood or law, and in the endless night, a new dawn began. New destiny among stars. The Alliance summit had ended in chaos. The echoes of Princess Alira's declaration still rang through every council chamber, every command center, every hidden stronghold in the galaxy. Some celebrated, some plotted revenge, some feared what was now unstoppable. But deep among the stars, aboard the battered but proud Liberty's Edge, a new journey was already beginning. Captain Ryder stood on the bridge, hands resting lightly on the console. Through the main screen, stars stretched like rivers of light. Ahead of them lay uncharted space, unknown dangers, and unlimited possibilities. Behind them, the old world burned with quiet rage. The council would not forget, would not forgive. They would come. But Ryder smiled anyway, because for the first time, they were not running from the future. They were running toward it. Alira entered the bridge quietly, her silver and blue robes trailing behind her. She looked different now, stronger, calmer. No longer a princess bound by tradition, but a leader by choice, beacon for anyone who still believed that freedom was worth fighting for. She joined Ryder at the console, her hand brushing his lightly. "Any news?" she asked. Ryder nodded. "Some. Earth received your declaration. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of confusion, but mostly hope." Alira smiled softly. "Hope is a dangerous thing. The council taught us to fear it." Ryder chuckled. "Maybe that's why we like it so much." The crew gathered in the common area that night. Humans, Xanthari defectors, engineers, medics, soldiers. Different species, different histories. United by something greater than bloodlines or treaties. United by choice. By trust. By the dream of a better galaxy. Rack, the gunner, raised a battered metal cup. "To the mad princess and the crazy captain," he said, grinning. "May they drag us into every impossible fight and somehow win anyway." Laughter filled the room. Real laughter. Not the polite smiles of diplomacy, not the cold chuckles of politics, but the raw sound of people who had found family in the unlikeliest place. After the celebration, Ryder and Alira stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them. "Where do we go now?" Alira asked softly. Ryder thought for a moment. "Anywhere we want. There's a whole galaxy out there full of people like us. People looking for something better. We find them. We help them. We build something that no council can ever destroy." Alira turned to him, her eyes shining with fierce determination. "Then let's begin, unknown to them." Across the stars, secret signals were already moving. New alliances formed in shadow. Rebellions ignited on distant worlds. Ancient enemies stirred from long slumbers, sensing the change in the wind. The balance of power had shifted, and nothing could stop what was coming. Deep in the ruins of an old battlefield on a forgotten planet, a beacon flickered to life. An ancient human distress signal, lost for centuries, ignored, forgotten, until now, until the bond between human and alien woke something deeper, something older. The signal pulsed through the void, calling, inviting, awakening. Aboard the Liberty's Edge, the old radio systems crackled suddenly. Ryder frowned and tapped the console. A weak transmission emerged, static at first, then a voice. Old, tired, hopeful. If anyone can hear this, we are the survivors of Outpost 14. We seek safe harbor. We seek allies." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member froze, listening. Ryder looked at Alira. No words were needed, only a nod, only a choice. They had become more than a freighter crew, more than soldiers. They were a promise kept among the stars. The engines roared to life. The ship turned toward the signal, toward the unknown, toward the future. Alira stood beside Ryder, her heart steady. This was their path now, not ruled by fear, not dictated by blood, but by hope, and by the stubborn, unstoppable will to choose a different destiny. Far away in the cold heart of the council chambers, the elders watched. They saw the signal. They saw the shift in alliances. They saw the rise of a new power not built on conquest or fear, and they trembled, because they understood something too late. You can crush armies. You can silence voices. But you cannot kill an idea. You cannot kill hope. Not forever. As the Liberty's Edge sailed into the unknown, Elira whispered into the stars, "We are coming. We will find you. And together, we will build a new galaxy." Ryder smiled beside her. "Together." And the stars, ancient and endless, whispered back, "Welcome. You are not alone."